Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome to the Palm Springs Modern Committee, also known as PS ModCom. That's who we are. And this is our free lecture series called Modernism 101. And it's held in various locations throughout the Coachella Valley to reach out and spread the knowledge of modernism and why it should be preserved. So this is our second year returning to the Rancho Mirage Library, and we appreciate their cooperation in providing this great venue. Also, we want to thank our sponsors for this year, Eisenhower Health and Anderson Children's Foundation. So we have one more event after this year before we wind up the season. We will be down at UC Riverside in Palm Desert on Tuesday, April 7th at 6 p.m. And the subject will be an important subject, actually, for the city of Rancho Mirage, Richard Neutra's Maslin House. How many people know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand, the Maslin House. So, okay. My alarm on my phone is going off, by the way, telling me that I should be up here right now. So I'll be turning it off when I get down there. The Maslin House was created by and designed by Richard Neutra and was built in Rancho Mirage for the Maslin family. And it was, significant Neutra house that was torn down and demolished years ago. And everyone wondered how something like that could happen, and a lot of things have happened since then. It was a catalyst for preservation. So our subject will be the film that was made. It's a short film about the Maslin House, and this was made by filmmaker Scott Goldstein, who will be there. And then it's going to be followed by an in-depth presentation on the house and its owners by PS ModCom's historian Greg Braun. And this is going to be a really in-depth presentation of things not shown in the film, drilling deeper into the design of the Maslin House, who the Maslins were, their art collection, which was really significant and beautiful, their furniture, everything. So for fans of that house and what happened after that, you'll get to really dive in and enjoy it. And for those who know nothing about it, the film is going to introduce you to the whole subject. So I hope you all come down for that one. So today we are presenting and welcoming Sidney Williams. Yay. She's the daughter-in-law of E Stewart Williams, the subject of today's lecture, and the former curator of architecture and design at the Palm Springs Art Museum. She's going to give an illuminating lecture on her father-in-law's architectural legacy. She'll explore how Williams' mid-century modernist vision transformed Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley through iconic projects such as the Sinatra House, Desert Bank buildings, and the Palm Springs Art Museum, and more. Here's Sidney Williams.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see you, colleagues and friends today. And I want to thank Joan and Palm Springs ModCom for doing such a fabulous job programming this series and bringing great speakers to the community. So I'm really pleased to be talking today about my father-in-law, Stewart Williams. I was really lucky to be part of the Williams family, a very talented family. Stu and Mari were not only the best in-laws anyone could have, but they taught me a great deal about architecture and design. Like many creative couples, they worked as a team, encouraging and supporting one another. In fact, today I'm wearing one of Mari's sweaters. She was a fantastic designer and knitter, and she had clients of her own, and she actually worked with El Dorado Country Club, with her sweaters that went with the skirts and the scarves and the blouses and the whole thing there. So they were a great creative couple. Today, I would like to focus on Stu and his projects, but also on his clients. My personal point of view. He used to say that architecture is always a compromise, never the exclusive creation of the architect, but a lengthy negotiation between the client, the planning commission, the building codes, and the budget. Stu had a really long career in Palm Springs, designing hundreds of projects, residential, commercial, educational, and there we go. Educational and museums. I will highlight a few of them and some that may not be as familiar to you. And I will endeavor to reveal something about each client and architect project. So let's get started. You may wonder why I begin this talk with a photo of a birthday party. Well, the birthday party was held at Stu and Mari's house in honor of Harold Hicks' birthday. Surrounded by 10 beautiful women, Harold is clearly enjoying himself. Each one of these partygoers had a connection to Stu as a client, a design partner, or through their husbands. In this presentation, I want to focus on Stu's work and his relationship with clients. This will be a very personal journey. You may ask, how important is the client in this process? Well, we will explore that today, but first I'd like to give you a little bit of Stu's background and education. Stu was born in 1909 in Dayton, Ohio, to Harry and Una Williams. This is the family house designed by his father, Harry. His father, Harry, was a graduate of Cornell University and practiced architecture in Dayton with his partner, Harry Irvin Schenck. Stu said that he always wanted to be an architect, and he frequently accompanied his father on construction sites. The firm designed numerous buildings in Dayton, banks, hospitals, schools, and private homes. The Wright brothers, Wilbur and Orville, hired Schenck and Williams to design a lavish home on 17 acres in Oakwood, just south of Dayton, called Hawthorne Hill. Sadly, Wilbur abruptly died in 1912 before the home was completed. In 1914, Hawthorne Hill was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The family enjoyed their summer place on the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania, designed by Harry. There, Stu and Roger, his brother, had free rein. Seeing this photo of a cottage with wood and a stone chimney made me think that Stu's affection for natural materials began very early. Stu attended Cornell University, where he received his architecture degree. Based on Beaux-Arts principles, the Cornell program emphasized courses in drawing, painting, and sculpture. Stu made a series of etchings of buildings and sites around the campus, like this one. Clearly, his artistic skills developed there. He won the Baird Prize and received the silver medal from the AIA upon graduation. Continuing his study in architecture at the University of Pennsylvania, he received his Master's of Architecture degree in 1934. As this was a depression with very little architecture work available, Stu began teaching at Bard College, Columbia University, where he remained for 4 years. He said, quote, "The dean asked me if I could teach art. I had studied some art history and did some watercolors. I told him, if you give me a week, I could teach Hebrew." Here you see him as the man about campus. In 1938, he was a finalist for the Guggenheim Fellowship for Research in Modern Architecture, and soon he took off for Europe. But before departing for Europe, Stu took a trip to Mexico, which resulted in a series of watercolors depicting festivals and daily life. In 1938, he was awarded the Zabriskie Prize at the American Watercolor Society for his watercolor, Tierra Caliente. Unfortunately, in later years, he tried to locate this wonderful watercolor, but he was not successful. Stu traveled through Germany, France, Holland, England, Denmark, and Sweden, studying modern architecture. The work of Walter Gropius and Erich Mendelsohn impressed him, and he made sketches, notes, and took numerous photographs of each building that he visited. The clarity of design, simple forms, use of glass, and machine-made materials impressed him. However, it was the warmth of wooden churches in Scandinavia that impressed him. But that was not all that impressed him. On the south coast of Sweden, he met the love of his life, Mari Schlittern. After his travels, Stu returned to New York to work for Raymond Loewy, and he and Mari corresponded for 2 years. When World War II ramped up, Mari left Sweden, traveled by train through Germany, imagine this, in 1938, and sailed from Genoa to New York. And soon she and Stu were married. Meanwhile, in Palm Springs, his father Harry had been invited by Julia Carnell, the wife of National Cash Register Vice President and a client of his, to come from Dayton to design a shopping center. Mrs. Carnell had visited Palm Springs and stayed at the Desert Inn and become friends of Nellie Kaufman's. The opening day for the Palm Springs Plaza described it as, quote, the new shopping, amusement, and residence center of the world's most famous desert resort, formerly to be opened November 1st, 1936. Harry is seen here with Nellie Kaufman, owner of the Desert Inn, as they are cutting the ribbon on opening day. The plaza was truly one of the first mixed-use centers in California, designed with accessibility for the newly mobile set. Car ownership had changed the concept of shopping. After the completion of the plaza, Harry brought his wife Una, who suffered from rheumatoid arthritis, to the desert, which was really good for her health. Soon, Harry became busy with architecture projects and asked his sons, Roger and Stuart, to join him in Palm Springs. Roger had also studied at Cornell. Roger arrived first with Stu, arriving a little later because he had been in the Navy at Mare Island in San Francisco. The Williams firm set up shop on the second floor of the plaza. Seen at their drafting boards here, Roger's in front, and Stu can be seen in the fourth table back of the drafting table. Of course, in those days, everything was hand-drawn. Here, Stu, Roger, and Harry are studying the model for Palm Springs High School. They designed several of the campus buildings. Throughout Stu's career, he commissioned Julius Schulman to photograph his projects. This is the Potter Clinic, designed for Dr. James Potter on North Palm Canyon Drive. It was a 2-story building with a medical clinic on the ground floor and apartments on the second floor. This is where Mari and Stu and their 2 children first resided when they came to Palm Springs. Mari and Stu furnished their apartment with modern and Scandinavian furniture and fabrics that Mari had silkscreened. The floor-to-ceiling glass panels open to a south-facing patio and the view toward the Indian canyons. Mari was an exceptional hostess, and here you see a Swedish smorgasbord that she prepared for their friends, including Albert Frey and Louisa Clark, the wife of John Porter Clark. The Palm Springs Villager noted that Swedish meatballs, herring dishes, and Swedish beet salad were on the menu, and I can attest to all of them. They are specialties in the Williams household to this day. In the early 2000s, the Potter Clinic, which had undergone some remodeling, was sold, and the new owners began an extensive remodel, taking it down to the studs. They ran out of money, the building deteriorated, and this sadly resulted in a permit to demolish it. Stu's first major commission was for Frank Sinatra in 1947. The story goes that in May, Frank wandered into their office at the plaza on the second floor, wearing a sailor hat and licking an ice cream cone. and asked the firm to design him a house. He suggested a Georgian-style home. As Roger later remarked, quote, "If we had done that, we would have been ruined." Fortunately, Stu prepared a modern design for him, and Frank agreed with the caveat that it be done by Christmas for a party he wanted to have. And this was May. This was Stu's first house, and although built for the most famous resident of Palm Springs, not in his mind a great example of his work. Nevertheless, it incorporates many of the ideas that Stu would later refine in his projects. The clear-story windows under the wide roof overhang and the huge panels of glass allowed abundant northern light. The organic shape of the pool, in contrast to the horizontals and verticals of the structure, formed a comfortable retreat for Frank in the desert. Because Frank requested that the house be finished by Christmas, crews worked around the clock to complete it on time. The family enjoyed the holidays there. The large patio area, piano-shaped pool, and pool house made for really wonderful, relaxed outdoor entertaining. The thin steel columns created a rhythm in the walkway. The flagstone adds warmth, and the house is oriented to the pool for indoor-outdoor living. This vintage photograph shows guests enjoying the pool. In 1947, coming to Palm Springs certainly meant luxuriating by a pool, and preferably with a martini in hand. The master bedroom overlooked the pool, which expanded to a view of the mountains beyond. Along with large panes of glass, Stu used fieldstone for the fireplaces and redwood siding for the exterior. Soon after the house was completed, Nancy and Frank were divorced, and Ava Gardner became Frank's second wife. There are legendary stories of their tempestuous relationship, and a crack in one of the basins still remains where Frank smashed a champagne bottle. Oh, the stories the walls could tell. The floor plan shows the separation of the master suite from the guest wing. It is essentially a two-bedroom, 4,000 square foot house. Sinatra sold the house in 1957 and built a house in Rancho Mirage designed by William Cody. The Twin Palms house has been restored and currently operates as a rental. Soon the office was contacted about larger projects and more complicated ones. Earl Kaufman, a desert pioneer and co-manager of the Desert Inn, and Francis Crocker, an electrical engineer, seen here, were visionaries. They imagined constructing a tram from the desert to the top of Mount San Jacinto as a great boon to tourism, whisking visitors from the valley floor to the alpine setting in minutes. In 1948, they employed the Williams firm and Clark and Frey to collaborate. The mountain station was to be designed by Stu and the valley station by Albert Frey. John Clark was the project architect. Stu and the artist O.E.L. Graves, known as Bud to his friends, built a model of the proposed mountain station. On the right, you can see Graves' rendering of the valley station. It took several years before the project could become a reality. Research into Swiss tram cable systems, working with the Park Authority, and acquiring financing caused several years' delay. This 1962 rendering by Ken Nichols shows the mountain station. The Park Authority required that no trees be removed to construct the building. The tram opened up winter recreation possibilities like cross-country skiing and also summer hiking trails. The steel frame construction anchored into the bedrock, and vast expanses of glass made the interior bright, and visitors could enjoy views from inside at the restaurant and bar. Stu chose stone masonry and wood in keeping with the alpine environment. All the construction materials and the crew needed to be airlifted by helicopter. This meant over 30,000 helicopter trips. The two men who initiated the project, Earl Kaufman and Francis Crocker, celebrated the opening of the tram in 1963, 15 years after its inception. Since 1963, using private bonds and no public funds, over 20 million people have enjoyed this attraction. The Oasis Hotel has a storied history. Designed by Lloyd Wright, son of Frank Lloyd Wright, it was built in 1923. With its concrete construction techniques and detailing, it is considered the first modern building in Palm Springs. After Western Hotels purchased the Oasis, portions of it were demolished, and the Oasis office building was constructed in 1953. Designed by Stu, it featured shaded retail spaces on the ground floor with offices on the second floor. You recall that Stu visited some iconic modern buildings on his trip to Europe. The Villa Savoy was one of them. Clearly, the Pelodis and the elevated second story influenced him on the Oasis office building. The Williams Architectural Office located on the second floor on the north side. Dewey Metzdorf was senior vice president of Western Hotels. In 1944, he had bought the Oasis Hotel, where he enjoyed the dry desert winters from his Seattle residence. He later sold it to Western Hotels in 1952, helping to establish the company's presence in the area. He then commissioned Stu to design a modern Oasis Hotel, designed around a large pool and patio. This was a popular hotel in the 50s and 60s. Stu designed the drive-up reception entrance with a shaved, curved canopy. The entire project was a multi-year one and included 50 new guest rooms. The dining room faced the pool and patio and accommodated a large number of guests. After Western Hotels sold the property, there were multiple changes, and it is now the Palm Mountain Resort, and some of you may recall that. When Stu was asked about his projects, he wrote lists of selected works. In the Williams practice, Stu was the chief designer, Roger served as the engineer architect, and Stu never failed to mention that Roger and later John Porter Clark were integral to their practice. Stan and Hermine Rosine had a huge impact on the cultural and religious life of Palm Springs. Stan came to Palm Springs in the 1930s and worked at the Carnell building designed by Harry Williams. After marrying Hermine, the two settled into life in the desert, raising a family. After a few years of meeting in private homes for Jewish services and Sunday school, they gathered their community together to build a Jewish community center. Stan Rosine, who owned the plaza and other hotels in Palm Springs, was the leader in establishing the temple. He first asked Stu to design the Hebrew school, and then with additional fundraising, Temple Isaiah was constructed and completed in 1949. Now known as the Lieberman Chapel, the building was constructed of aggregate concrete block. In a Prickly Pear interview, Stan recalled how some of the members questioned the use of concrete block, associating the material with basements and garages. The exterior south-facing wall of the temple had a repeating pattern of the Star of David incised into the surface. The building won the first honor award by the AIA. However, the surface design of the chapel was subsequently plastered over. Stu designed the light fixtures, the altar, and the menorah, and the simplicity and intimacy of the design recalls the work of the Saarinen's first Christian church in Columbus, Indiana. In November 1954, the Palm Springs Villager named the Idris House the perfect desert home, extolling how it blends into the desert setting. The clients, Bill and Marge Idris of Seattle, spent several winters at the Potter Clinic in one of those upstairs apartments. There they met and became friendly with Stu and Mari. Soon they purchased an 1.5 acre property in Little Tuscany and commissioned Stu to design their house. Due to the rocky terrain of the alluvial fan, the pool was excavated first. The boulders that were removed served to form the surrounding landscape. Before we had a pool, Marge and Bill offered our family access during the summer. The deep pool stayed cool and became an oasis of relaxation for us. Stu said, quote, "There's something special about the West that is so wild and beautiful, and I felt that all of this natural environment should be captured. This house exemplifies his commitment to embracing the natural beauty of the site and infusing the house with the character of the surrounding environment." Marge and Bill loved to entertain, and Marge loved to serve caviar to her guests. While Bill, a self-made man, loved to party, he also enjoyed football games by betting on both teams. Stu incorporated wood in many of his houses because it brought in warmth and a natural material of the desert environment. He understood if the wood was kiln-dried, and it would not warp in the dry desert climate. The rock wall of the fireplace extends to the exterior, drawing your eye toward the view. When the Idris house was built in 1955, Little Tuscany had very few homes. The empty lot seen through the floor-to-ceiling glass panels would become the Polevsky house, designed by Craig Elwood. Stu lamented the fact that this was a Moroccan-style enclosed courtyard plan and did not relate to its surroundings. Marge and Bill did not have children and few overnight guests, so the house is essentially a two-bedroom house. In the guest room, the exterior stone wall runs from inside to outside, providing a private patio. The clear-story windows allow additional light and views of the nearby hill. Deepwell Guest Ranch was owned by Frank and Melba Bennett and Dorothy and Philip Boyd, active residents and civic leaders. For 18 years, it flourished as a guest ranch, but in 1949, with the pressure of real estate development around it, they sold it. And in 1952, the property was subdivided for homes. Leon Kerner and his wife Taya from Vancouver, BC, purchased 4 adjacent lots, 2 facing Kai de Maria and 2 on Ocotillo. Designed in 1955, Stu collaborated with landscape architects Ekbo, Dean, Royston, and Williams, and interior designer Arthur Elrod on this project. They managed this on a tight timeline as Leon asked Stu to design and build the house while they were in Vancouver and have it ready for their arrival in November for the winter. The story goes that when they arrived, they entered the house for the first time. They walked from room to room in total silence, without commenting, and Stu anxiously walking behind and accompanying them. At the end of the tour, Leon remarked, "Simply marvelous." This rendering by Stu makes clear that the house was surrounded by a lush garden, pool, and patio, and open to the mountain view. Leon and Teo would spend November through April enjoying the dry desert, which was healthful for Leon's emphysema. While in residence, they entertained many visitors and hosted parties there. I should mention that Leon and Teo were my great-uncle and aunt. Their friendship with Mari and Stu extended to my parents, who would come to the desert for a winter vacation. In this photo, you will see a shuffleboard court on the left, framed by a lush border of white petunias. This is one of my fondest memories of my first trip to Palm Springs when I was 12 years old. My parents, my sister Diane, and I were guests of Leon's for dinner, followed by a game of shuffleboard. Leon, in his trademark lapel-less silk suit, played with aplomb while we had no notion of the technique or the strategy. Our discs flew off the end while Leon won every single game. That evening in March, with the scent of the petunias and the blooming citrus, is an indelible memory. Roger, Stu, and Tex Kidwell, who was a popular entertainer, singing here at a party at the Kerner House. When Leon bought the lots in Deepwell, he did not want power lines and poles obstructing the view of the mountains. He paid for the lines to be undergrounded, which is still uncommon in the area. In recent years, the house has been restored, removing additions and abiding by the original footprint. All systems were updated. Using the landscape plans by the ECBO firm, landscape architect J.C. Miller returned the garden to its mid-century design. In 1961, Mari and Stu visited with Leon in Vancouver. It looks like it was a really cold day because Mari is wearing a fur. It was the time, too. After he designed his Palm Springs home, Leon invited Stu to be a design consultant for the Graduate Center at the University of British Columbia that he proposed. Named in honor of Thea, who died in 1959, it was designed by Vancouver architect Ned Pratt of Thompson, Berwick and Pratt. Originally from California, Earl Cordray studied at the Chenard Art Institute with Sam Hyde Harris, a noted landscape painter. On completing his studies, he and his wife Kay moved to New York to further his career as a commercial artist. After 15 years in New York, illustrating for publications including Collier's, Cosmopolitan, Good Housekeeping, and others, he and Kay decided to settle in Palm Springs. The climate and slower pace were good for his health and the pursuit of his own art. Earl and Kay became active members of the community. Kay was in the party photograph I showed at the very beginning, and Earl designed numerous covers for Palm Springs Villager and joined with Milt Jones in founding Palm Springs Life magazine. This cover is the first issue in 1958. Cordray had many artist friends in the East, and he wanted to introduce them to the beauty of winters in Palm Springs. Earl and Kay and Mari and Stu were great friends, and Earl commissioned Stu to design the colony. The colony was built as a home with 10 studio apartments. His fellow artists could stay, paint, and enjoy the desert weather and landscape. The design of the complex offered large panes of glass and north exposure for natural light. A pool and patio area were popular places for parties and socializing. The November 1949 issue of Architectural Record featured a 6-page spread on the colony. With photographs by Julie Schulman, the article described the apartments in great detail. The former golf course of the Mirador Hotel became the home sites of Albert Frey's and John Porter Clark's homes. The third architecturally significant house to join the neighborhood was the Williams family house. Stewart and Mari held a groundbreaking party. Albert, John, and Robson Chambers, who joined Clark and Frey in 1952, along with Louisa Clark, posed with Williams' Folly in the background. Lining up with Stu and Mari, ready to crack the champagne, are their 3 children, Eric, Marianne, and Jeff. The house sits on an 1.5 acres set back from Paseo El Mirador. Stu oriented the house east-west to take advantage of the dramatic view of San Jacinto. The house is largely glass with a wide butterfly roof, providing shade. The living room was furnished with an alto table, modern furniture, and a coffee table of steel with marble tiles designed by Stu. Stu planned the house with a 100-foot garden wall running through the house. Each panel, constructed of pebbled concrete, was poured in 7-foot by 40-inch frames on the ground and then tilted up and reinforced with structural steel bands. The walls served as a windbreak from the prevailing winds and the westerly breezes, and in the interior, the clerestory glass panels allowed for views of the exterior trees. Surrounding the suspended fireplace is a cluster of boulders and planting that continues to the exterior. The floors were stained sage green, polished concrete. The living room and kitchen looked out on a shaded patio. The dining counter faced the interior garden. You can see louvered glass, which was was known as a very common material at the time, which allowed for outside air, especially using the swamp cooler. Later, Stu installed air conditioning in the bedroom wing, but initially there was only a swamp cooler. In later years, Stu added a carport and installed a huge stone sculpture at the entry. In 1997, Mari and Stu sold the house to Dale Chihuly, the glass artist, and then they moved to Seven Lakes. A subsequent owner added the pool and expanded decking. In 1951, Ralph Kiner and Nancy Chafee Kiner commissioned Stu to design a home for them and their 3 children at Thunderbird Country Club. Ralph was a Major League Baseball player and Nancy a ranked national tennis player. Both outstanding athletes, they sought a home on the golf course. The post and beam construction had all glass panels facing the golf course. The interior of the house had a wide view of the outdoors, and the floor-to-ceiling glass emitted plenty of light. Eldest son, Michael, recalled feeling that the light was incredible. Michael became an architect, some of you may know him, and felt that the experience of living in the house undoubtedly had an impact on him. Stu spoke about the design of the pool. In the Kiner house, the free form of the pool paving echoes the shapes of the sand traps and greens of the golf course, which the house faces. Nancy and Ralph entertained in their new home. Note the shelves where Ralph's trophies were displayed. The previous photo and this one are courtesy of Michael Kiner. He thinks the photos were taken at a party to celebrate the completion of the house. Here is Mousy Powell, Stu, Ralph, and Nancy enjoying themselves. The couple divorced and the house was sold in 1968. Since then, it has been remodeled extensively and is enclosed with a wall on the street frontage. Jack and Helen Keniston asked Stu for a family house on a double corner lot near Thunderbird. The entry features an angled wall perpendicular to the front door that provides privacy for the patio off one of the bedrooms. Jack came from a family of 6 brothers, all active in civic and social scene in the desert. His brother Bob was married to the actress Billy Dove, seen on the left in the group photo. Helen was active at the Palm Springs Desert Museum, now the Art Museum, in the Women's Committee with Mari. Pete Maruzzi, who wrote the National Register nomination for the house, noted, quote, consistent with Williams' architectural philosophy, the Keniston residence adeptly demonstrates how his integrated natural materials expressing the local environment into his modern architectural design. The material palette included stone, corrugated aluminum siding, and glass panels. The house formed a U shape around the pool with the rock wall continuing several feet down into the water. The premier bedroom is on the west side of the pool, while the living and kitchen are on the east. A shaded patio cover and extended roof offered a shaded gathering spot. A later addition expanded the eastern portion of the house, but did not disturb the original design. Harold Hicks, the birthday boy that we saw earlier, was the son of Alva Hicks, a contractor in Palm Springs, and the founder of the Palm Springs Water Company. Harold was active as a realtor and insurance broker. He asked his friend Stu to design an office building for him. Using slump stone, native rock, this low-slung building now houses the shops at 1345 North Palm Canyon. Bob and Dolores Hope had several meetings with Stu to discuss the home they wanted on a large lot on South Ridge. Stu spoke about after-work meetings at the Hope's Alameda house in the movie colony. The meetings were often interrupted by phone calls and distractions. This sketch reflects an early schematic for the house, garden, and pool. In this rendering, you can see the suggested elevation with a hip roof. Stu had a model built and invited Mrs. Hope to come to the office to view it. While pointing at some aspect of it, she put her fist through the model. A few days later, Stu wrote to the Hope saying he regretted that his work on Crafton Hills College was consuming his office, and he declined to continue. As far as I know, this is the only job that after initial meetings, Stu turned it down. Subsequently, the Hopes commissioned John Lautner to design their home, which had a lengthy and not entirely satisfying conclusion for Lautner. The Palm Springs Desert Museum was founded in 1938 in a Quonset hut. As the town grew, there was a need for a larger museum site. Williams, and Williams with Clark and Frey designed a building on Tahquitz. The program at that time focused on natural science, desert flora and fauna, and Cahuilla culture and Indian artifacts. As the museum programs expanded, an auditorium was added for concerts and lectures. When Fred Sleight became the museum director in 1965, he understood that the growing interest in developing an art exhibition and collecting program would require a much larger building. The Board of Trustees began exploring the idea when Walter Marks stepped in and received the donation of almost 4 acres of land against the mountain from Home Savings and Loan. It would need to combine art and natural science galleries as well as a theater for performances and lectures. Newt Hotchkiss, a member of the Board of Trustees, is shown here with Stu and Roger holding a roll of architectural drawings. Working with a board of a nonprofit as clients has its challenges. Some members questioned whether Stu's office could handle this size project. He invited the board to visit Crafton Hills College with him to see the large campus project they had recently completed. This confirmed their decision to hire him. Here is Roger and Dee with Mari and Stu at Sunnylands in 1974, where a fundraiser was held for the new museum. I think Stu's pants indicate he was the more outgoing of the two. Stu traveled to museums across America to study their galleries, delivery areas, storage facilities, and offices. At the time, there was a 35-foot building height restriction. For this 3-part program of art, natural science, and performing art, Stu chose to place the theater in the lower level with the 2 galleries cantilevered over 2 sculpture gardens. He said, quote, "What makes a building unique is its response to the total character of its site, and therefore site is often a generator of the form and character of the building. It seemed to me that whatever form the museum would eventually assume, it must respond in color, texture, scale, and total context with the character of its majestic site and environment," end of quote. He chose volcanic rock from Clear Lake, California in the Sierra for the building. Not only did the rock contain multiple warm colors like the adjacent mountain, but it was lightweight with a color throughout each piece. And by cantilevering the galleries, it created shady spaces below where the sound and sight of fountains provided a cooling presence. In order to suspend and cantilever the galleries, post-tension and steel cabling and poured-in-place concrete were necessary. Stu was especially proud that there was no deflection over the years and the geometry of the cube stayed put. As the board and Stu developed the program for the building, 2 large galleries were devoted to art on one side and natural science on the other. An outdoor sculpture court was surrounded by offices, a library, and a members' lounge. For those of you who only know the building after the Steve Chase wing was added, you will see how it changed greatly from the floor plan of the original. The interior courtyard, open to the sky and view of the mountains, held sculpture from the permanent collection. The ribbed aggregate concrete surfaces recalled the ripples of the desert sand dunes, now sadly mostly gone. He said, "You know that concrete is a very wonderful material. The structure is the finish. It doesn't have to be covered up with fireproofing. If it's well built, it will stay there for a long time. From inception in 1970 to completion in 1976, the museum kept the Williams, Clark, and Williams office fully occupied. In 1978, the California chapter of the AIA gave the firm a special award of excellence for the design. When asked later in life what was his proudest accomplishment, he would reply, "The museum." For a small firm to successfully complete such a large-scale project required countless hours of drafting, engineering, and oversight. Here he is holding the roll of drawings and the hefty notebook, which was full of the speculations required to detail the construction. Of course, there were essential philanthropists who contributed generously to the museum. Walter and Lenore Annenberg were especially involved. Mrs. Annenberg was president of the Board of Trustees. The theater in the museum is named for the Annenbergs, as was the art wing on the main level. The theater's curved wood panel ceiling and side panels created wonderful acoustics for music and performance. Working with the famed interior designer Arthur Elrod, the striking orange continental seating with orange flooring created a warm and vibrant space. Marge Idris, who you may remember with her husband Bill, the clients for the Idris House, donated the funds for the chandelier that sparkles in the stairwell. Designed by Stu with 365 light bulbs, it continues to awe children on school tours. Barbara and Frank Sinatra were married at Sunnylands in 1976. Seen here with Mrs. Annenberg with a striking agam sculpture, they are standing in the Frank Sinatra Sculpture Court. Almost 20 years later, in 1994, interior designer Steve Chase donated a significant portion of his art collection and funds for the museum to build a third story to the building. That summer, Stu had just arrived in Sun Valley, Idaho on vacation when he received a call from the museum about this potential addition. While he pondered the thought of coming out of retirement to return to work, Mari said, "You wouldn't want anyone else to work on this. This is your project. You're the architect." So Stu flew back the next day to Palm Springs. At 85 years old, he could be seen on the construction site daily, surveying the work. The third floor addition enclosed the interior courtyard that had been a sculpture garden, provided a mezzanine gallery and upper-level galleries for the museum's permanent collection, as well as adding 15,000 square feet to the museum. At the opening gala, Janice Lyle, the director of the museum at the time, praised Stu's work as a seamless and elegant addition. In the 1960s, Palm Canyon Drive between Barristo and Ramon became known as the banking district. Stu designed 3 banks on the street. Santa Fe Federal Savings and Loan commissioned Stu to design 2 banks for him, one in San Bernardino and one in Palm Springs. Vern Potter, who is vice president of the bank, oversaw the project. In keeping with the resort atmosphere of Palm Springs, Vern requested a little jewel box. The steel pilotis support the wide roof and allow the interior to be column-free, sitting on a platform with a lower level below grade. Essentially a glass pavilion, Stu used sliding aluminum screens to shade the glass panels. The decor of the interior reinforced the resort feeling and relaxed atmosphere that the client requested. In the 1980s, the savings and loan crisis caused the Santa Fe banks to close. For some time, the building was unoccupied, and then it was bought by Westman Development. In 2009, the museum was fortunate to purchase the building for an architecture and design center. The architecture firm Marmol Radziner rehabilitated the building for a museum function. Using the original plans and photographs by Julia Schulman, they were able to restore the building. In 2014, the museum opened the Architecture and Design Center, made possible by many generous donors. The director, Steve Nash, and chairman of the board, Harold Meyerman, led the project to completion. After Stu had worked with Vern Potter on the Santa Fe Federal Bank, they became friends. A few years later, when Vern was on the board of the Community College District, he recommended Stu to be chief design architect. The hilly site had been donated, and it created several challenges. Stu selected the crest of the hill to site the administration building. All the buildings were constructed of concrete, as fire was a constant worry in the hills. Using his favorite concrete material, the clock tower featured ribbed concrete texture. Stu spoke about his favorite materials. The Palm Springs Library series, Prickly Pear, featured an interview with Stu and Roger Williams conducted by Eric. I thought I'd show you a clip so you can see and hear Stu speak about his work.
But I have always felt that architecture should be approached with an open mind, and you have a program, whatever the client wants, whatever the site dictates, and then you are faced with a different climate here than you have in Seattle, and you have a different climate here than you have in Florida, and you don't have a set of rules that covers everything. You have to sit down and see what you can afford to use in the way of materials. And after you get your program worked out, you select materials that suit the program, suit the client. And I have always said, if you just use natural materials, materials that are things like concrete and stone and brick and metal and glass, wood. I don't like stucco, I don't like paint, because they don't hold up. Every time we have used stucco, I look back on it now and it's all cracked and crazed. And I always have tried to use, in every building I've done, as many natural materials and natural finishes, and just let the beauty of the material be the thing that you see on the finish, not cover it with stucco and cover it with paint. And I think that more or less rule has guided me all through the years that we've done work here. Of course, I think.
In 1972, the Annenbergs asked Stu to design an indoor pool in their Sunnylands residence. Adjacent to the master bedroom, they frequently enjoyed a swim. With floor-to-ceiling glass panels, they could view the mountains and garden from the interior room. The plans for the pool reside in the archives at Sunnylands, along with photos of it. They are what is remaining. When the Annenbergs closed their Philadelphia house, they removed the pool to create a sitting room for art and furniture pieces they had brought west. Dr. Jack Sternlieb, a renowned heart surgeon, was the head of cardiac surgical program at Eisenhower and desired his own building for his practice. Designed in 1983, the 3-floor, 55,000 square foot Heart Institute is hexagonal in plan. Stu worked with Jack on the form and his mother Lily on the interiors. Jack occupied the building for several years before moving to Florida. The hospital then took it over, and the building became the Lucy Curci Center at Eisenhower, and that happened in 2004. In 1979, the Annenbergs funded the Annenberg Center for Medical Science at Eisenhower and commissioned Stu. They wished to establish, in quotes, establish an unmatched facility where leaders in education, medicine, government, and industry will gather to contemplate issues of the next century, end of quote. Planned for lectures and conferences with meeting rooms as well as dining facilities, he designed a circular building. With an expansive shaded entry portico, it is faced with 31,000 white pentagonal tiles. The exacting mathematical precision of this surface is evident when there are no partial tiles. The entire circular form is covered. Mrs. Annenberg penned a congratulatory note to Stu after seeing the Steve Chase wing and museum expansion. She then asked if Stu would assist Walter and me with some further plans for our final resting place at Sunnylands. There was a Chinese pavilion on the Sunnylands property, and an initial idea was to move it to another site as the Memorial Pavilion. Stu made detailed drawings of the structure with notes on moving the components. The Memorial Pavilion was to hold 2 sarcophagi under a sheltered roof. It isn't clear why Stu did not complete the project, but my guess was that he was 88 years old and was in retirement. Here is the final design by Alfred Cook of Palm Desert for the Memorial Pavilion. It was sited to face the mountains on the west and be visible from the master bedroom suite. After many years spending time in Sun Valley, Stu designed a duplex condominium for family and friends, including Vern Potter and his wife, Barbara. On the Wood River, he elevated the living and dining to the second floor to provide a wonderful view of the river. Stu can be seen standing on the entry porch. Stu began his practice designing residences for clients, beginning with Frank Sinatra House, several in Palm Springs, and 4 houses in Rancho Mirage, Kiner, Keniston, Higgins, and Bly. In the 1980s, as his practice was winding down, he returned to designing a few houses. Dr. Adrian and Cass Graff Radford were art collectors who enjoyed entertaining. The house that Stu designed for them in Clancy Lane was full of light and with wide overhangs that shaded the glass panels. The covered loggia on the east side of the pool was a shaded breezeway leading to an outdoor bar. Stu used his favorite materials, the broken-faced ribbed concrete block and wood. For each project, he designed in concert with the client's wishes, always mindful of the desert environment. At the luncheon when Stu received a fellowship to the AIA, he made this remark: "Art in architecture is elusive. A project need not be starkly original to be considered successful, but it becomes art only when it touches the human spirit. It need not be a mighty tower. I remember a tiny wayside chapel in Mexico, open to the sky and wind. The only sound, the rustle of paper flowers at the altar. No cathedral touched my spirit more. To capture that moment is why I became an architect. Only time will tell if I achieve my goal." Finally, in this statement, Stu leaves us with a warning. Quote, "Sometimes I think that those who live in Palm Springs forget the beauty that surrounds it. I hope that you and others yet to come will nurture and protect that beauty and demand that architecture of the 21st century be designed to preserve it." Thank you all, and to all those. These people were an immense help to me. I want to thank all of them for their contributions in making this possible. And thank you so much for coming.